Hey, everybody. Welcome to In the Know with Nina. I'm Dr. Nina Crowley, your host, and I'm here with Seca, where we work to help patients, practitioners, and clinicians get better body composition into their clinics and move away from just BMI and weight. And I'm really excited that just got back from a conference where we had a lot of that conversation. And I wanted to bring on two patient advocates who I got to hang out with a lot at the Obesity Week conference. Mike and Zach. So, Mike, thanks for joining me. You may know Mike is Mike on a mission too on all the social media channels, and he's got a Substack, Mission Report. Mission Report. Is that right?
The mission report.
Okay,
Yes,
I
that's
haven't
right.
I haven't done Substack yet, so I'm not following you there. But I did just join TikTok because you guys convinced me that that's a place we need to be having these conversations. So I really had a enjoyable time this week with you guys, and I'm really glad you wanted to continue the conversation with me. So thanks for joining.
Well, thanks for having me.
So what I hoped we could talk about a little bit is some of the, taking some of the in-depth conversations that we had and bringing them to our audience here, who's primarily practitioners, clinicians in the space of, obesity care, primary care. We have quite a few healthcare providers. We also have patients and advocates. And as you know, I'm on the board of the Obesity Action Coalition. So it's a real important mission of mine to work towards advocacy and access for all. So I know that we share that passion. I had a really strong feeling when we left Obesity Week that it felt different this year. And I know that we've talked about how that felt for you. So I wanted to kind of get your reaction first about how did it feel to be in this space surrounded by providers, researchers, but as a patient and advocate, and just let our audience get to know you a little bit if they're not already following you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. First, I want to thank you and Sika for encouraging me to go to Obesity Week. I think you remember that I first contacted you because when I started filling out the form, it totally felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. And folks like you sort of adopted me and were like, no, 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 we need your voices there. So first, thank you. It was an interesting space to be like a patient advocate in, right? It felt to me like purely patients. There were like less than 24 of us out of over 4,000 people in the room. And we are what the research is about. And so we're sort of where the rubber meets the road, right? Like it's really what I found most interesting were the moments where we engaged in conversations with people who had done research and then they re-engaged back with us. I had one amazing conversation with, I think it was Dr. Mitch Bierman out of San Diego about a study he was doing. And we grabbed him in the exhibition hall and he's like, can you just go to dinner with me? And we went for 2.5 hours and talked about his research, right? It was that kind of experience. I think patient voices have a really big place there. They haven't built it for us yet, but I would love to see them do more of that.
I love that perspective too, because I think for me, even only 24 is a lot more than maybe we have had in years past. And I do remember, for me being in the bariatric surgery space for so long, I would always be trying to have a patient on a panel, and it would always be this kind of, big deal to figure it out. Like you said, the structure is not maybe set up for bringing someone who's not a clinician in that space, because it just traditionally has been that kind of a meeting. But I love, seeing more energy to that. And I think, doing what you do, which is a voice to a lot more people, hearing from you that it was a space that was welcoming and, friendly and open. I think that's huge. I'm excited for thinking about next year in that space too, because I'm sure we'll have a lot more interest because of what, you guys are doing and talking about. I did want to, kind of pick your brain a little bit about, what stood out from the meeting. What did you like from a patient perspective? Was it cool to hear about the deep, hard bench science research? What would you have liked to see more of? Because I think that people are listening and they do want to make this program more interactive and a more comfortable space for patients to be there.
I loved listening to the research because so much of it is quantifying what we feel in large social media spaces where we talk to hundreds of patients sometimes a night about their experience. And so seeing posters on how people on GLP-1 medications might now be embracing whole foods and how that happens over time and what that sort of tracking looks like to get there. Or when a patient goes on a GLP-1, do they have the impetus to then start to exercise? There were so many workshops or studies like that quantified what we all see day to day in the conversations that we're having over on places like TikTok, right? Where you're taking what seems like gut instinct on our part and seems obvious because we've talked to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people about this. And now get to see it, that it's more than our gut instinct, that science is starting to quantify what we're seeing. I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
I love that. And as you know, one of my big passion areas, of course, is in body composition. And so in years past, there's been talks on body composition. It comes up in a lot of the research. But this year, again, in particular, felt really heavy on the research around body composition and the practical side of how do we get that into clinics? How do we show people their numbers? Is it motivating? What are the numbers supposed to be? What are we looking for? And I know we spent a lot of time talking about sort of quantifying and understanding muscle mass versus
Yes.
lean soft tissue. And I think, kind of bringing back to what first brought us together is you've had DEXA scans in the past that gave you some information about your body composition. And then when we met at the OAC meeting and you got on seca's bioimpedance device, you got some different information. And so we met to talk about, what are the differences and what can you understand from that? But I'd love for you to share sort of your experience with body composition, because it brought up some new things that I never actually considered before from your perspective.
Yeah, I've been obsessed with body composition since I started on this journey. There were two sort of moments that I think woke me up to it. And I've always wanted to maintain my muscle. I knew I was carrying a decent amount of muscle because I've carried a lot of weight on my body. So I've been literally carrying weights around on a regular basis. I'm 52 years old. My goal isn't to look like, a supermodel. My goal is to be able to walk up the stairs and carry my groceries at 85 years old, right? And so when I first started, I couldn't get a good body comp. DEXA, I started at 372 pounds. And, I'm not alone. There's lots of people starting the journeys on GLP-1s or with bariatric surgery at that level. And I couldn't get either InBody or DEXA to work for me. I actually went and bought an InBody scale. I didn't know that. And so I had to get down to, I think it was 330 pounds in order for my InBody personal scale to work. And even then, when I got on it, my thighs were still too large in order to actually do the stance to get consistent data. And I kept waiting to get below the line for DEXA. And when I finally got to a DEXA scan, it was about 6 months in. And I think I was at 317 pounds at that point. And still they had to bind my body so that my elbows were as tight as possible, and they still didn't all make it in. And my feet had to be bound, and you have to lay there for 8 minutes completely still while you're like tied up like a mummy. And so I really enjoyed my seca scan for the first time, right? It was actually freeing to be in a space where I could just stand there at any weight and get it. And I wish I found it sooner.
Oh, I love that. I think it's so interesting to think, we say, oh, it's just easy, lay there for 8 minutes, right? But that's a long time to be laying there in that position. I did not know that they bound your arms. So that was really new information for me. And again, as someone who I used to run a bariatric program, and we were all about making sure everything in our environment made sense for the patients that were coming there. The chairs were comfortable and didn't look out of place. The scales had the weight limit, so no one had to even ask that question of, do I fit? Is it going to work? Am I going to, tip it over? Is it stable? Can it hold me? I mean, all of that. So this is definitely something that I'm extremely passionate about. And it's really important, especially in that early phase of your journey, to know what's happening with your body composition, right? So now you're forever wondering what happened from 372 to 317 in the muscle realm, in the adipose tissue realm. And so I think without without questioning that, it's nice to be able to have something that can be done in the clinic. You don't have to go off site. I was also surprised when we started kind of picking through your reports. They were very lengthy reports, and there's lots of data and information on there. And it sounds like for a lot of these centers, you're going off site to get the report done, and they may or may not send it back to your doctor with the interpretation. So it feels a little bit disjointed for a care model too.
It's completely disjointed. In my case, I pay about $120. I get it to an app on my phone, but it never goes to my doctor unless I choose to share it. They never ask me for the name of my doctor. Now, I don't know if that's across the board, but these are typically franchises, right? And so I've loved the data that I get, but it's for me, and I have to sort of purposely share it with folks like you. Or like I had an obesity med coach that I worked with at one point, and she went through one with me. But it's not seamless. And I would love to be in a obesity medicine clinic, frankly, that had one of these machines. It was just part of my conversation with my doctor. That has not been my experience yet.
And the interpretation part, it varies greatly, right? So, sometimes they have someone, I think I can talk more with Zach, but I think he was telling me you can pay to have it interpreted or not. And so, again, if you're getting the money to pay the 120 and you don't want to pay additional for interpretation, I can see a situation where people are opting out of that. And then who's explaining that to you? Are they on the medical team? And so there's a lot of pieces there that make me feel good about the way that, we've been positioned in a clinic. My job really is to teach the providers to be able to understand the parameters and talk about them. So I think from a flow and environment perspective, there's some definite ways we can get that done better. And then another big part of it is really understanding the accuracy and what the numbers are and what they mean, because there's a lot of terms out there that are confusing. And this is, again, we listened to a talk with Dr. Grant Tinsley, who's a real, expert in the area of body composition research. He did an amazing job sort of breaking it down by the compartment of the body. What is the different, molecular model versus the tissue model, and being able to talk about which methods assess those parts of the body and what they can and can't tell us. I do feel like there's lots out there, and every day there's more and more home devices, being put out there for people to measure at home. And I think that's always a first line. People say, well, yes, that would be the best, right? We can talk another time
Absolutely.
maybe about that, but I'd love to hear too, it maybe without me explaining it, like what was your interpretation after we had a conversation around the differences between what the DEXA versus what Seca's BIA device told you? I'm putting you on the spot.
So what I loved about seca is the amount of data I have around the muscle distribution in the body, right? It's not just a sense of like, in your arms, you have this. It's actually your left side, your right side. There's a lot of good data. And there's a lot of good data about soft muscle tissue. I think that's what we call it, right? It's much more detailed than just this is your cartilage and this is what all this is, and it's not fat. It's a much more detailed picture of the actual muscle and the quality of the muscle. That's been my interpretation of it anyways.
Yeah, and comparing the numbers, right? So that lean soft tissue from DEXA is giving you everything but the fat molecules and the bone density, the bone. And so that includes your skin, your, connective tissue, water, and muscle. We heard a lot of folks talk about how the fat-free mass, which would just be body weight minus the fat molecules, so it still includes bone density, but that fat-free mass is about twice of someone's skeletal muscle. And so that was where terminology wise we're like, wow, this DEX is telling me lean soft tissue, I'm getting skeletal muscle from seca. What is the difference and which do we care about? And I will say that the research is still out in patients on GLP-1s versus some of the other ways that people lose significant amounts of weight. Some of this is pretty similar. How much of the fat-free mass are you losing? How much of that is skeletal muscle, and what matters, right? Is it okay to lose a little? We're still, really in this place where we're hearing more research coming out every day. It's also about function and, is your grip strength improving? Are you able to lift more? Are you able to move and meet your goals of, walking up the stairs and doing some of the more functional things? So I think another take home for me is that that we're probably not just going to have one measure. We'll combine different ways to assess muscle, mass and amount along with strength and function. Um, but that difference between lean soft tissue, fat-free mass, and then skeletal muscle is important. I always promote Grant Tinsley and Carla Prado, who has a really nice paper on the terminology and what we should be using. And I'm really using that as a platform to teach people to use the right language, right? Because we see, and you probably see this even more in your space, people talking all the time, kind of fear mongering, right? Around medication. Like, you're losing so much muscle, we need to be really worried about this, but we don't know. And we don't know if we're just looking at fat-free mass or even lean soft tissue. Is that the stuff that we're worried about, right?
That information is super interesting, and it was super helpful to be able to see muscle in a different way. And it's really motivational for me to be able to like focus on what I think I truly need to be focused on when it comes to quality of muscle. And it was interesting because my latest data actually showed me declining in muscle, right? And that's a real motivating factor for me to get back on it, because I really had let the sort of resistance training part slide for the last few months. And so being able to see it in such a qualitative and quantitative way really did help, that I think it wouldn't have necessarily helped the same if I had done it in a different way.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you letting me pick your brain on this and get your experience. It's been super helpful. I can't thank you enough. I do want to make sure that all of our folks are following you in all the places. So tell me where your preferred social channels are and how we can find you.
Yep. So where I'm most known is on TikTok. So I'm Mike on a mission 2 there, and I post daily, and I go live a lot talking about GLP-1s, GLP-1 access, and supporting each other in a community. And I report out on a newsletter on Substack, which you don't have to join Substack to join, and I don't charge for anything for it, but it's called the Mission Report. And we do 2 things on that. I look at GLP-1 advocacy issues that we can talk about, and also help you find really good creators on TikTok who might support you on your journey that are evidence-based. So that's where you can find me.
I love that. Well, Mike, thank you so much. And I know that we'll be doing the conference circuit again soon. So thanks so much.
Look forward to seeing you.
Hey, everybody. I'm really excited to be here with my friend Zach Niemiec, who is a patient advocate who's been in the bariatric and obesity care space for 8 years. And he was with me at Obesity Week. We had a lot of good conversations and time to connect. And I wanted you to be on here along with Mike today to talk about your experience and help get us excited about moving forward and what's next. So thanks for joining.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's hard to believe that was last week already. Like, it's been quite the whirlwind. And I feel like we're still processing and like remembering some of the things that we had heard. Just like the other night, I was looking at my notes again, and I saw something that I wrote down, that efficacy doesn't equal tolerability either. And I was just like, oh, wow. And then I just had like a whole like thought wormhole on just that little note that I had jotted down from the conference. So I'm still finding gems to talk about.
That's the best. I mean, you and I know from, being at a lot of these conferences over the years, this is why we do it, right? It gets us re-energized. And I mean, I can say after being in the field almost 20 years that this was one of the more exciting weeks and conferences, and really just lots of positivity and energy. And while we were there, we learned some new information about access and advocacy and coverage. And that was really cool to sort of be with our people to process that information too, right?
It really was. And for me, I've gone to a lot of these more professional theme shows over the years. And I don't know how many patients had been at Obesity Week in the past, but like let's say, outside of the patient practitioners, let's just say that the 15 to 20 patient advocates that were kind of there on the ground throughout the week was very exciting to see. And I think it caught the attention of some of the other attendees that like, whoa, there are patients here who aren't doctors, and like they were curious about like our experience and they asked questions. I even had one doctor join us for dinner after like his talk one night to continue talking about like his abstract that he presented, which was absolutely wonderful. And it was kind of, I felt like bridging that gap a little bit between patient and professional, as well. That um, there was a little bit of a reminder that patient voices matter, and that it's not just the data sometimes, that like there is a real person at
Mhm.
the end of that research that you're conducting. And I think us being there was a physical representation of that. And um, I felt proud that I could voice, be a voice for other patients who, I have it's a small following, but they sent me with things to ask and talk about too, on from social media, and go back to them and say, well, this is what I'm hearing, and then we can like continue these conversations. So I was really pleased to see, TOSS, the Obesity Society, being so welcoming to have us there and just go, oh, you're not a medical professional, you can't come.
Yeah, and I think over the years, especially with OAC being so involved, we've done a good job getting patients sometimes on panels and being part of the presentation faculty. But I think this is a whole new era of people wanting to come and learn the information, and I even saw a few patients stand up and ask questions from their perspective, which I think really helps. I mean, practitioners have their own patients, right? But like it's a different vibe when you're at a conference as a kind of a colleague, or in that kind of relationship. So I agree. Felt like it was different. There was more. I think next year again there'll be even more. And so I did want to sort of get your feedback. What did you like? You felt welcomed? I love that. Was there anything missing? Like, what should we be in the field kind of thinking about for our next round of patient professional meetings? What do we not want to miss?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I would love there to be more lived experienced panels though, that are literally patient doctor up there, where it is moderated by Q&A within a like an area of topic. Even if it was just like the advent of OMMs in a social media era, like, because I know we talk about how they get talked about in the right way and the wrong way on social media, and kind of demystify that together as a group. And if like some of us as patient advocates, if we're going to have a platform on social media, like what is our responsibility in that as well? I think that is a great conversation that could be had together. But I also think, from like the stigma, or kind of patient shaming, perspective, like I think it would be a good platform to have, again, more patient panels about what we're feeling as a patient community, so
Mhm.
that we can better, I don't want to say restore, but I want to say the word mend the patient doctor relationship. um, I think the kind of era that we've been in, and I don't put it on a fault of a medical professional that we've gotten here. I think the COVID era kind of goofed a lot of things up, because we went very hard one way into telemedicine, and there's nothing wrong with telemedicine either, but a lot of places went into volume of patients being the focus, and patient centric care is where we win. And I think if we can continue to remind people of that, and um, a lot of people who have lived with obesity, um, feel dismissed even by their medical provider, and still do to this day. And I think we need to continue to get better with that. I think we're better as we are, because patient centric language is coming out. But as we've learned, at these conferences through people like Dr. Robin Pashby, or Dr. Paul Davidson, who wasn't at this one, but he was at OAC. Stigma and bias very much still exist, and um, I think patients really want to crack through that, and that exists not just for GLP-1 patients, but bariatric patients as well. It's any of us that are living with the disease of obesity, living in these larger bodies. You know, many of us heard the, have you tried to move more and eat less? I posted a TikTok that said obesity is more than calories in and calories out, which is obviously a bit of a simplification on that front, but I'm not discrediting that calories in and calorie out is a part of, you know, managing it. But from the perspective of, it's a disease, it's time to recognize that it is a disease, and our disease state affects our ability to manage these other things that allow us to live this healthy life. So, you know, just getting people to that understanding, because I actually had a dietitian comment on that video, and I was really disappointed in the comment. It was like, oh, so you figured out a way to defy the laws of thermodynamics?
Oh,
And
wow.
I responded back
She wasn't one of
politely
my
saying, you
people.
know, like, I have a lot of yeah, I was like, I have a lot of friends that are registered dietitians. I have a lot of respect for the community, the schooling that you guys do, the work that you guys do. But I said, if you don't know that obesity is a disease, like, I encourage you to look into that more. And then I actually got an apology from that dietitian back on the video, which was really refreshing to have that conversation via social media, because I think people just, you know, it's clickbait, you want to fight, you know, yada, yada, yada. But um, I think people are willing to change. And I think we need to be in the room to have that conversation at the very least. So I just
Yeah.
hope that we continue to do it. I hope more patients continue to self-advocate and show up to things like these. I mean, I want to respect the professional space as well. Like, this should not become all of a sudden where it's a 50-50
Mm.
attendee to, you know, patient to professional. But having, you know, some patients in the room is helpful for these practitioners in continuing to you know, develop better care in the future, is my thought, you know, process with it. Because um, I want to respect the profession that they also, you know, studied very hard for. And you know, I have now built into a practice to treat others with the condition that I have.
Yeah, so Zach, I think one of the things too that is I think about a lot is that, you know, my experience in the bariatric community and yours, I mean, this has really informed a lot of the way we work and talk about and to people living with obesity. So for me, what's funny is it's like, of course we should be doing patient-centered care. Of course we're talking with patient first language. Of course there's patients on panels and at meetings, right? But for so many people, this experience is new. And so one of the things I really love is for people like us to be able to take our experience and what we've learned about how to do this well from the surgical side and from the bariatric community and apply it to the new, you know, kind of folks in this field and help people not make the same mistakes that we did over years. And, you know, so I'd love to hear even how that's informed your work in the, you know, more patient facing social media community.
Well, I think the biggest thing is I'm constantly finding myself saying it's not bariatrics versus GLP-1. It is bariatrics and GLP-1, and trying to educate patients that we need every modal of treatment for
Mm.
the actual disease of obesity. I know surgery can be scary. I went through it. I've had two bariatric, actual bariatric procedures, one revision, as well as I had a Lynx device put in. My path in that space has not been easy from a patient side of things. And often people say, how are you so positive about it? And first of all, what else am I supposed to do? Like, I have a disease, I want to fight it. Like, like that's where I've gotten here. It's definitely, though, really informed where I was with the GLP experience. And I'll be honest, on the GLP experience, I had a liver doctor because I had advanced non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And I've got that diagnosis about 4 or 5 months into my GLP-1 treatment. And, she sat me down and said, listen, um, I think you should probably go back to bariatrics and maybe consider a bypass at this point. But she goes, at the same time, why not also see how far you can ride the medication out and then can like get your consult for that if we still are dealing with the liver sickness and these other comorbidities that we need to work to resolve for your condition. And quite honestly, I didn't have to go back to a bariatric center this time. Would I have? Absolutely. I still fully believe that metabolic surgery has a place in this community. The data even suggests that it has longer, better long-term outcomes currently still. But I think what we're going to be talking a lot about more in the future is, again, this togetherness, where every tool in the toolbox is going to be used with patients to customize a personal treatment plan for them. And that might still involve surgery. It might not. It might involve a GLP-1. It might not. So I think it's really important to have these conversations because just like surgery, even though surgery doesn't have a unified metric for what a non-responder is, there are non-responder data and a more unified definition of what that is amongst these OMM obesity management medications that are out. And the very last day of Obesity Week, there was a presentation by a doctor from Stanford program, their metabolic surgery, which they now call lifestyle and weight management, and it sounded like endocrinology and weight management have all come together. And he said that patients don't fail treatments, treatments fail patients, and that it's up to them to go. Don't tell the patient that they're a failure. It's up to them that we have to tell you that we need to find another treatment option for you. And I think we're really at that time where it's so exciting because, as we learned too, there are so many of these GLP-1, GIP, glucagon, or amylin agonists, all these different things, or some of them aren't actually GLP-1, they're monoclonal antibodies. They're all in development. The data is promising right now. We know that some of the drug makers are going to be filing for different versions, new drugs to come to the market here soon for patients. I just think it's a really exciting time because we can treat more patients, and what might not be working for someone now, one of these other things might be working for their phenotype of obesity. And I think surgery may still play a part for a lot of these patients. And for me personally, the bariatric experience helped me a lot with the nutrition piece of this. There's a lot of nutrition coaching for a lot of bariatric patients. And now I've been fortunate enough to be in the side of it where I've been, exposed to a lot of dietitians or folks who helped write nutritional guidelines for bariatric patients over the years, and get to see how that side has evolved from Flintstone vitamins to a specific product for these patients to make sure that they don't become deficient. I think I asked a researcher after a panel the other night, are nutritional deficiencies really being looked at in your clinical data? And she goes, barely. We're just starting. And she's like saying, even from a macronutrient or micronutrient, they're not really including that in the data to find out if patients are actually getting everything they need, and it's not part of like their adverse nausea or vomiting things that they're tracking with it. And then I suggested that they did, because I think at some point we're going to have unilateral guidelines for those patients. They might be completely different than a metabolic and bariatric surgery patient, but when we take in less food, odds are there increases our chance of becoming deficient in something.
Yeah,
It's just
there's
kind of where we're at because of food quality in the U.S. And around the world. So that's really been a big piece. And I know you want to ask about like movement and exercise and everything. And I just say on the note of bariatrics, we talk about something called transfer addiction a lot. Like moving from food to something else. I think mine has gone to the gym, so that's where I think I've gone with that.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, I think just to comment too on something you said, I think the big piece in bariatric surgery and metabolic surgery in that area that we've learned is that the comprehensive care approach is really, strong. And that's been a part of the guidelines and the pathways for bariatrics for a while. And so that's why you have these, embedded dietitians and people that are my colleagues who we've been doing this for a long time and know how to work with people from a behavioral perspective, from an understanding the human and all of that. And so I do see that as a big area where we can lend that experience to programs so that we don't have places that are simply giving someone a medication without the support or the individualization that they need. I mean, there's some people who may not need as much as others, and unless you're fully fleshing that out and figuring out how to treat that individual within the care team, then I don't think we're doing a service to just give someone the biological piece if they need more. And
Yeah.
yet there are some people who that may be all they need. We've just got to sort of do that assessment. And so, yeah, I do think your exercise story is interesting. And I think the other piece I wanted to just, hear you share some of the conversations that we've had is around body composition. So that's been a part of your journey along the way with surgery, with being in the community, now with medication. You've tried a couple different devices. We dove through your DEXA scans and talked about what the different metrics mean. And you've done now 2 seca scans, so we've been able to look at those. So I'd just love to hear sort of your thoughts on the experience, what you like, what data seems to be helpful, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about the maintenance concept that we talked a good bit about over breakfast that one day.
Yeah, no, for sure. So just for I believe I personally kind of say I entered maintenance around late May, early June. That matters to this body composition piece of the question. Um, because I would say in March, just a few months before I officially, kind of got to where I planted the flag and said, okay, I think this is maintenance. I really completely revamped my gym going. I went and got a DEXA scan and I said, I'm nearing the end of the weight loss. And I didn't pay nearly enough attention that I should have or wanted to my body composition over the losing period. And I was fearful that maybe I lost muscle. Obviously, I know I did, but I feel like I didn't lose a lot. The first DEX I got was not like alarming in any way. I actually, it gave me a good baseline of where I needed to work towards. In between my first and second DEXA scan, I got my first seca scan. And it showed really exciting results. Some of the data was very similar to that of the DEXA. There was one number though that was like, oh, I don't know. Like I was like, could it really be that different than my DEXA or whatever at that point? And that was the body fat percentage or fat mass between the two scans. But then I got another DEXA scan in September, about 2 months after that seca scan, and the tech before like I even like knew what the data was, he was like, "This is an incredible transformation." And he's like, "Where do you think you're at?" And I was like, "Well, I got this other scan, and it had me at like 12.3% or something like that." And he's like, and I was like, I don't think, I was like, my goal was to come here today and you to tell me that I was just under 20%. And he's like, no, believe that other one. he goes, you're actually 12.3%. And that's what that scan came in at. And now, just a little bit later here, we just did the second seca scan, and, it's gone a little bit, lower, again, from the one in July. But when I got those results in September, I completely changed my entire workout routine yet again, to work towards these composition goals. And it's not really about driving down that fat mass or adipose mass for me anymore. It's about building some more lean muscle mass. And what I'm really proud of is between both the DEXA and the seca scans, both are showing great improvements in that lean tissue. And like that is what's important to me, because if I did lose any, I'm replacing it now, and I'm replacing it with better quality tissue. And honestly, I've never gotten this far in my journey before, so it's absolutely terrifying to me too. I
Well,
like to
and your change in numbers have been really impressive. I mean, I think that's, for me, the big thing that we kind of narrowed in on too was looking at, DEXA can show you the fat mass, the bone density, and the lean soft tissue, but we wanted to know more than that. And so for Sika, being able to look at the actual skeletal muscle closer to that MRI validation, right?
yeah.
That's the number that you cared about the most. And that's the number that you've been able to really see go up with commitment to that, intense or obsessive, as you said, exercise routine. But that's a number that really is important to all sorts of other health indicators. And now that you're kind of approaching this place where your adipose tissue's low, we don't have to worry about that so much right now as a driver. Let's figure out how to keep these numbers and maintain them and stay excited and stay changing your routine when you get, bored of it. And, I think that's a piece of this that's really, to me, was really exciting about looking at your numbers together as wow, you've exceeded any expectation that we'd have from like, this is where expectations and goal settings is a whole interesting conversation. What we would have said is achievable as an average, if you look at a bell curve, right, with medication or surgery, you've exceeded that. But we don't want to limit that, right? You've got personal goals that exceed what medication may have done on its, by itself, right? So the additive effect of maximizing surgical, medication, nutritional, behavioral, exercise interventions is really what I'm seeing when I'm looking at that data. And the person in front of me saying, I feel better, I look better, I'm confident, I'm doing all the things. Like, to me, it was a really big, all these things coalescing into a person who's like, I've changed my health. And with the
Yeah.
story about your liver and all that, that's huge. That's why you do this.
Well, quite honestly, I think for me, it was like, we read things, we understand things, we take them on as knowledge, but until we see it in practice, though, too, what we might believe, we might not fully like believe until we see it, type of deal. And what I've had to like learn and accept myself is like, I feel like I'm at this period where it's actually a learning of when the body is in the condition that like it was always meant to be,
Mm,
like metabolically healthy and functioning, just how much your body unlocks for you
mm,
in order to do things, and like the body's ability to heal and do things. I've been working with a sports massage therapist a lot lately, because like part of the recomp and everything, like I want to take care of my muscles. I've also been pushing myself hard at times, so like I need some more of that recovery. But um, what's unique about the person I found, they've actually coached me with some stretching and some other things to work in, but to even get their feedback on how my body is changing on parts that like I don't see my back pretty regularly, and like I'm not digging into the tissue, and for them to say no, things are moving, like your
mm,
skeletal muscular structure is going back, like it's going back to where it should be. You're coming
mm,
into me less off kilter. My chiropractor saying like the same thing. In my chiropractor, we had we compared x-rays year to year, and like I started getting curvature back in my neck and in my lower back, and my shoulders were more balanced in a year's time, but my weight greatly changed between last June and this June when we did them again. And I'm so excited to see that again. So it's like, it's, I think what drove me to our next part of what you wanted to talk about, and I know we're wrapping up here, is there are so many metrics beyond the number on the scale, and that is why I got to this maintenance place and this thinking that I have with maintenance now. You mentioned the breakfast. We were talking about it, and I said that I viewed maintenance and the body composition as separate journeys now. They run parallel to each other, and what I might want to accomplish in one may affect how I proceed with the other, and vice versa, in balancing that scale, no pun intended. But the maintenance portion is really, for me, staying within that identified healthy weight range that I've set for myself, that may fluctuate because I'm putting out muscle mass on now, so that might affect what that range actually looks like on the other side. But that side is about keeping my disease of obesity in remission, or a remissed state, maintenance, where it doesn't relapse, remit, and I, get some of these comorbidities back or start to feel bad. That is how I view maintenance now. It is not active weight loss. It is keeping the condition at bay at this point. And then this other journey is anything else that I add to it, whether that's the muscle building, the working out, making sure my nutrition is spot on, taking care of my body in a bunch of different ways, whether it's, again, chiropractor, massage therapist, or, just numerous other things. Like, I've separated them. But they're still very much connected. But I think I needed to separate it because the separation, I don't weigh myself frequently anymore. During the whole active weight loss phase, I was an everyday person. I had to break up with the scale because it's not the end all be all. It is in a way that, like, it will be an indicator for me if all of a sudden, like, every time I weigh myself, I'm start going up 5 pounds. Well, I might have to reassess everything that's going on the other side. And is that really a bad thing that's happening? Or is that more that I'm building so much lean muscle at that point? But I now weigh myself like once every 3 to 4 weeks, and I've been staying within the same 10-pound range that I've set for myself. With my primary care doctor, we set a goal range, not a singular number. We set a 10-pound range, with the target in the middle being roughly where to hover. And, sometimes I'm above it, sometimes I'm at the low end of it. But, like, I've been staying in that range. And, like, to me, that means maintenance is currently still being achieved, and my labs and everything are still coming in great. I've not had like a liver enzyme spike or something like that.
You have a much more neutral relationship with that number. That's also what I'm hearing is you're able to
Yeah,
put it in its place and say, here I love the way you just phrased that. It's in a range, there's a target, but you're not obsessing, you're not overthinking. You're like, this is a piece of data. And that's, I think, a real goal for a lot of patients is, to be able to have that kind of relationship with that neutral piece of information and use your energy elsewhere.
yeah. Well, my seca scans, my x-rays, the feedback that I've gotten from my massage therapist, like all of those things, or working with my dietitian, like all of that feedback is far more heavier weighted average now for me than the tile on the floor that I step on every so often. Like, that is now showing me that I'm achieving all the goals beyond where I've ever gotten before, like you mentioned. And we joke around, we hear about mindset shifts and changing your mindset. Well, I did it, and
Yeah.
I had a great experience with a mindset shift. So I think I would encourage others to, like, assess what maintenance actually means for them,
Yeah.
and then carry that journey out the way that with their like work with their providers on that to make that journey manageable for them. Because I think sometimes people feel like they bite off too much and then they just get nowhere. So make it a manageable journey for you. If I had a
Listen,
final
this has
a
been
final
an
thought on
amazing
that.
conversation. I loved the time we spent together. I know now we'll stay connected and go to these meetings in the future together. So I really appreciate all your insights. And if we want to stay connected with you, what's the best way to follow you, Zach?
Yeah, so I am available on TikTok. That's where I post mostly, at Lucky, LUCKY_fins, FINZ. It's the same on Instagram, or if you are more in the professional space on LinkedIn, it's Zachary Niemiec, ZACHARYNIEMIEC, and you should see this mug there on any of those platforms, and you'll know it's me. So, um,
Amazing.
thanks for having me, Nina.
Thank you. We'll keep this conversation going. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Bye.